Hy everyone, my name is Kestrel Monroe, I'm 27. And if you think betrayal stings most in boardrooms or breakups, you've never sat at a family table built to remind you don't belong. On New Year's Eve, I asked softly, is there a spot for me at the table? My mom didn't even pause. She smirked like it was rehearsed. This table is only for the chosen ones. My brother's laugh cut through me, loud and careless. Stand and watch like always. The chandelier flickered above us, catching every smirk, every dismissive glance, like a camera flash exposing my place, somewhere beneath them. I felt my pulse in my fingertips, felt the chill of glass doors behind me. My heart sank, but I didn't let them see it. I just turned, heels brushing against polished wood, and walked into the December night. Outside, fireworks clawed the sky with glitter and smoke, but I couldn't feel the celebration. The street echoed with other people's laughter, and my reflection in a darkened shop window looked like a stranger, still, waiting, unwanted. The next afternoon, the phone buzzed sharp on my counter. My brother's name. His voice trembled as though the arrogance had been drained out of him. Kestrel, I need $18,000 immediately. Please, it's urgent. I let silence linger until he could hear my breathing. Then, steady as ice, I whispered, Happy New Year. Ask the chosen ones. And I hung up. But the story didn't end with that call. 2 minutes later, a knock rattled my door, too light to be threatening, too deliberate to be casual. A courier stood shivering, pressing an envelope into my hand. My name was stamped across the front in heavy black ink. Inside, my stomach turned to stone, notice of default. Amount due, $18,000. And at the bottom, 2 signatures. His wild scrawl. And beside it, a neat forgery of mine. The walls of my apartment seemed to lean closer, listening. That night at the table wasn't humiliation, it was a warning. A setup. And suddenly, I wasn't just excluded. I was framed. The paper trembled in my hands, though not from weakness. Rage can make your body shake like winter wind. My name, written in neat strokes I never placed on that page, stared back at me like a ghost of myself. Forgery wasn't just a trick. It was theft of my existence. I pressed the envelope flat on the counter, the edges cutting into my palms. My phone buzzed again, messages stacked from the family group chat. Don't be dramatic. He's under pressure, Kestrel, step up for once. We're all embarrassed by your attitude. I wanted to laugh. Embarrassed? They weren't the ones shackled to a debt they never touched. They weren't the ones erased from the dinner table only to be resurrected as collateral. I closed my eyes and let the anger pool low in my chest, heavy and steady. That's when I decided, I wasn't going to beg them to clear my name. I wasn't going to plead innocence to people who saw me as nothing more than a convenient scapegoat. The first step was proof. I searched through my emails, banking apps, even old texts, looking for breadcrumbs he might have left behind. And there it was, tucked inside a chain of messages I'd nearly deleted months ago, a screenshot he had bragged about. Easy approval with a cosigner winking face. The date, the lender, the terms, all right there. My brother's arrogance had always been his tell. He wanted credit without responsibility, a crown without the weight. And this time, his overconfidence had given me the rope I could hang his lies on. I saved every file, every timestamp. Then I called the lender. The woman on the line sounded tired, her voice clipped, but when I mentioned forgery, her tone sharpened. If you can provide evidence, Ms. Monroe, we can open a formal investigation. Evidence. That word felt like oxygen. I ended the call and leaned against the cold kitchen counter. Outside, snow began to fall in slow, heavy flakes, blanketing the street in silence. It looked peaceful, but beneath it, roots of betrayal ran deep. And as I watched the snow gather, I realized, sometimes revenge doesn't start with shouting. Sometimes it starts with stillness. I barely slept that night. Every creak of the apartment felt like footsteps, every vibration of my phone like a demand waiting to swallow me whole. By dawn, the envelope still sat on the counter, a silent weight reminding me I wasn't safe, not yet. My brother called again at 7:13 a.m. His voice had lost all swagger. Kestrel, please, they'll come after me. After us. If you don't pay. I cut him off. Us? Don't use that word like we're bound together. You forged me into your mess, not your partner. He stammered, fumbling excuses, but I hung up. And almost immediately, another message pinged through. This time from Mom. Stop playing games. Handle it. His family. Handle it. That phrase sank into me like a stone. To them, my role was never daughter or sister, it was cleanup crew. Invisible at their table, indispensable when they needed sacrifice. By noon, I was at the bank. The lobby smelled faintly of pine cleaner and printer ink. People lined up, clutching checks and forms, oblivious to the war in my chest. When my number flashed on the screen, I approached the glass booth, sliding the forged contract across to the manager. He adjusted his glasses, scanning, then frowned. This signature doesn't match your file. Relief crackled like static in my veins. Exactly, I said, leaning in. Because I never signed it. He nodded slowly, lowering his voice. We'll need a sworn statement. And if you have supporting evidence, texts, screenshots, bring them. This isn't the first complaint we've had against your brother. My breath caught. Not the first. The manager's glance was brief, but it carried weight. Let's just say you're not the only Monroe with questions. I left the bank with snow clinging to my boots and a new clarity slicing through the cold. He hadn't just tried to ruin me, he'd made a habit of weaving webs, and I was just the latest strand. The thought should have broken me. Instead, it lit something sharper. Because if he thought I'd stay silent, he'd forgotten. Snow can bury, but it can also expose. The city looked different as I walked home from the bank. Colder, sharper, like every window was a mirror daring me to look harder. I replayed the manager's words in my head, not the first complaint. My brother's scams weren't an accident. They were a pattern. And patterns leave trails. I spent the next hours digging. Old emails. Faded receipts. Even the dusty box of papers I kept shoved under my bed. My hands moved faster than my thoughts, fueled by equal parts fury and adrenaline. That's when I found it, an unsigned letter addressed to Mr. and Mrs. Monroe. My parents. Debt collection. Amount due, $7,400. His name printed bold across the top. Their signatures at the bottom. So they knew. They had co-signed before. They had saved him before. And yet, when he dragged my name into the fire, they had the nerve to tell me, handle it. The betrayal deepened. Not just his forgery, but their silence. Their complicity. I forwarded every document to the lender's fraud department, attaching my sworn statement and the smug screenshot he'd once sent me. The email chain looked clinical, but between the lines was my heartbeat, steady, relentless, refusing to be erased. That evening, my brother showed up at my apartment. His knock was heavy, impatient, the opposite of the courier's timid tap. Through the peephole, I saw his eyes, red, frantic, darting. He pounded again. Kestrel. Open the door. We can fix this. Just talk to me. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. The lock between us felt like my spine, finally holding me upright. His voice dropped to a hiss. You think you're clever? You'll regret this. Mom and Dad are already on my side. You'll end up the outsider forever. The footsteps retreated, muffled down the stairwell. Silence followed, thick as snow. I leaned my forehead against the door, my pulse matching the rhythm of his fading threats. For years, I'd feared exclusion. Now, I realized, it wasn't exile. It was freedom. And freedom has teeth when you finally decide to bite back. The following morning, my phone lit up with a call from an unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. Ms. Monroe? This is Investigator Hale with the Lender's Fraud Division. We received your documents. His voice was calm, precise. We've confirmed inconsistencies with the signature and cross-referenced prior complaints. This case is moving forward. For a moment, I couldn't speak. Proof had become power. But power has a way of stirring storms. Within an hour, the family group chat exploded again. Mom, what have you done, Kestrel? Do you want your brother in jail? Dad, you're tearing this family apart. Handle disputes privately. Brother, you think you've won? They'll drag you into court too. I typed slowly, deliberately, if justice tears this family apart, maybe it was never whole. Then I set the phone down. By noon, whispers had already started traveling. A friend texted me a screenshot of a community forum post. Did you hear about the Monroe's son forging signatures? Lender investigating. The story was leaking like water through a cracked dam, spreading beyond the walls my parents once controlled. I should have felt shame, but instead there was only clarity. For years, they taught me silence was loyalty. That keeping secrets was love. But this wasn't love, it was rot-painted gold. Late that night, I sat by the window, the city wrapped in snow hush. Across the street, a neighbor lit candles, the glow spilling onto frosted glass. It reminded me of our New Year's Eve table, the warmth they denied me. But the difference was stark. Theirs was performance, this was truth. My brother called again, his voice raw. You don't understand, if this goes public, I'm finished. They'll strip everything. Please, just withdraw the complaint. I closed my eyes, letting his desperation wash over me like a song I no longer recognized. You finished me long ago, I whispered. Now I'm just writing the ending. The line went dead. And in that silence, I felt something I hadn't in years. Not fear. Not exclusion. But control. They came to me 2 days later, uninvited. A heavy knock, then the scrape of my parents' voices bleeding through the door. I opened it only because I was tired of shadows pretending to protect me. Mom walked in first, her perfume sharp as always, like roses cut too early. Dad followed, stiff and grim, carrying the weight of a verdict he'd already written. My brother trailed behind, eyes wild, jaw tight. Kestrel, Mom started, her voice rehearsed, you've taken this too far. Families don't take each other to war. Families don't forge signatures, I shot back, placing the envelope on the table like evidence in a courtroom. Families don't sit at gold-trimmed tables while they make their daughter the scapegoat. Dad's fist clenched against his thigh. You think dragging our name through public mud will make you strong? You'll destroy us. I laughed, hollow and sharp. No. I'm just refusing to be destroyed with you. My brother stepped forward, anger twitching in his jaw. Do you know what happens if this case sticks? I'll lose everything. My accounts, my job. Then maybe you shouldn't have stolen what wasn't yours, I said. Silence swelled in the room. The kind that forces truth into the open. Finally, Mom whispered, almost pleading, Kestrel, just withdraw. You know we've always done what's best for the family. That sentence sliced deeper than all the rest. Best for the family. Not for me. Never for me. I rose slowly, the snow-filtered light painting the floor between us like a dividing line. Do you hear yourselves? You're not asking me to protect him. You're asking me to erase myself, again. I won't. My brother's face hardened, but beneath it I saw fear trembling like glass about to shatter. Dad grabbed his coat in silence, and Mom's eyes glossed with something close to shame but not close enough. They left without another word, the door closing like the final click of a lock. For the first time, my apartment didn't feel small. It felt like territory reclaimed. But I knew this wasn't the end. They would strike again, because people who thrive on control never surrender quietly. The storm broke faster than even I expected. 3 days later, my phone lit up with news alerts. Local financial blogs, then bigger outlets, community entrepreneur under fraud investigation. My brother's name sat there in bold headlines, wrapped in the kind of scandal you can't buy your way out of. I scrolled through the comments, neighbors, ex-colleagues, even old friends piling on. Not surprised. Always thought he lived larger than his paycheck. His perfect image, polished by my parents for years, was crumbling like wet paper. And then, like salt in the wound, the lender issued a public statement, multiple forged co-signatures under review. Not just mine. 2 other names had surfaced. He wasn't just reckless. He was serial. That night, my brother called again. No arrogance left, only panic. His voice cracked. Kestrel, they are freezing my accounts. I can't even pay rent. Please, you have to help me. Tell them you made a mistake. I listened to the sound of his breath, ragged and shallow, the same way I had once begged to be heard at the table. And then, steady and cold, I said, Happy New Year, remember? You told me to stand and watch. So I will. I'll watch you face what you built. The silence on the line was heavier than any insult. By morning, my parents arrived at my door again, but this time the confidence had drained from their posture. Dad looked older. Mom's eyes darted, restless. You're making us a spectacle, Dad muttered, but it lacked fire. No, I replied softly. I'm showing the spectacle you've hidden. For once, they had no retort. As they left, I felt something settle inside me, not triumph, not vengeance, but clarity. They had chosen him over me every time. Now the world was choosing to see him for what he was. The cracks weren't just in his reputation. They were in the family fortress itself. And I realized, sometimes justice doesn't arrive with noise. Sometimes it arrives with silence, headlines, and the slow, steady unraveling of lies. The morning of the hearing, the sky was pale, washed clean by snowfall. I stood outside the courthouse, the same building where, years earlier, my family had paraded pride at my brother's business victories. Today, the only thing paraded was shame. He arrived flanked by lawyers, his suit wrinkled, eyes hollow. Mom clutched his arm as though proximity could erase the headlines. Dad walked a step behind, his jaw tight but cracked with fatigue. Not one of them looked at me. Inside, the lender's investigator laid out every piece: the forged signatures, the complaints from others, the screenshot he once bragged about. My brother tried to speak, his voice wobbling between arrogance and desperation, but every word only tied the rope tighter. When the judge finally spoke, her voice was steady as stone. Fraud confirmed. Cosigner cleared. Restitution and penalties to follow. The gavel struck. A sound so small, yet it cracked open years of silence. I stepped outside, the cold air biting but alive. Snow drifted around me, quiet, pure, unclaimed. Behind me, my family's voices rose in fractured arguments, but they no longer reached me. Their fortress had fallen, not by my destruction, but by their own rot exposed to daylight. My brother called my name once, raw, jagged, but I didn't turn. For the first time, I didn't need their recognition. I had my own. Walking home, I passed restaurants glowing with New Year's lights still hanging, tables full of laughter. I no longer longed for a seat at any table that didn't see me. My table would be built differently, smaller, maybe, but honest. At my apartment, I lit a single candle and placed it on the window ledge. Its flame flickered against the glass, soft and defiant. I whispered to the quiet, not in anger but in certainty. They thought they could erase me. But I am still here. The candle burned steady, the snow outside falling without end. And with that, the story closed, not in vengeance, but in freedom.